The most dangerous trap a liar sets for you is not a perfect story or some grand mastermind plan. It's a simple question that sounds harmless, almost polite. And before you know it, you've said yes to something that sells out your own reality. So, as you listen now, I want you to quietly ask yourself, how many of these questions have I already fallen for? Because in this world, the people who stay mentally untouchable are not the ones who never meet manipulators. They're the ones who recognize the script. They hear the line, they see the move, and they decide, nope, not this time. Let's start with the first one because this one hooks deep into good people. The first question is, you trust me, right? Sounds innocent. It sounds like something a partner, a friend, a boss might say in a moment where you're just supposed to reassure them. But listen carefully to when it shows up. Real trust is demonstrated over time. It doesn't need to be begged for on command. When someone asks, you trust me, right? As a way to shut down your questions, what they're really saying is, stop thinking, just agree. This is one of the oldest Machiavellian tricks. Use your virtues against you, your loyalty, your desire to be a good spouse, a good son, a loyal employee. They weaponize it. Picture this. You have a weird feeling about where the money went or something in their story doesn't add up. You ask a simple question. Instead of answering, they say, wow, you don't trust me. You trust me, right? And suddenly you're on the defensive. You're explaining your feelings, apologizing for doubting them, trying to prove you're not the bad guy. The entire focus has shifted away from their behavior and onto your loyalty. Here's how you stay mentally untouchable with this one. You separate trust from obedience. You can say, I trust you as a person, and I still need a clear answer. Or even more direct. Trust doesn't mean I stop asking questions when something important is unclear. A liar wants trust to mean blindness. A wise person uses trust as a starting point for honest conversation, not the end of it. When you respond like that, you're sending a very clear signal. My loyalty is not for sale at the cost of my sanity. Now, the second question. You've probably heard this one when you try to set a boundary. Why are you being so sensitive? This is the manipulator's fire extinguisher. You bring up a problem. They spray it with shame. Machiavellian minds love this move because it's cheap and effective. Instead of dealing with what they did, they make you question your emotional calibration. Are you overreacting? Are you the drama? Are you too soft? Here's the trick. Then at least, if they can get you focused on proving that you're not too sensitive, they never have to prove they're respectful. Think about a time someone said something cutting or dismissive or humiliated you in front of others. You finally say, hey, that wasn't okay. And they roll their eyes. Relax. Why are you being so sensitive? It was just a joke. No apology. Gaslighting light. And it works well on people who already hold themselves to high standards. People like you who don't want to be unfair, who don't want to be seen as dramatic. You stay mentally untouchable here by flipping the question. Instead of defending your sensitivity, you evaluate their behavior. You might answer, my sensitivity isn't the issue. I'm telling you how your words landed. Are you interested in that or not? That's a power move, and it's quiet. You're putting the responsibility back where it belongs. You're not begging them to approve of your feelings. You're giving them a chance to step up. And if they don't, that's data. That's reality, not theory. Third question. And this one is heavy with guilt. If you really cared about me, you would fill in the blank. Come see me. Give me money. Lie for me. Keep the secret, take their side, stay silent. This is classic conditional love. They attach your worth as a partner, a friend, a child, to your willingness to do something that benefits them. And because you're not a robot, because you actually do care, it hits you right in the chest. You can hear the logic, right? If you really cared, you would sacrifice your needs for mine, your comfort for mine, your integrity for mine. Machiavellian thinking sees relationships as leverage. Your affection is not something to cherish. It's a piece on the chessboard, so they will turn caring into a weapon. The antidote here is remembering love is not mind control. You can care deeply about someone and still say no. You can say, I do care about you. That's exactly why I need us to be honest. Or I care about you, and I'm not willing to do that. Those two things can both be true. And yes, sometimes they'll escalate. They'll pout, withdraw, call you selfish. That's not a sign you're wrong. That's a sign you just step out of the role they wrote for you in their script. The fourth question liars love is, are you really going to make a big deal out of this? This one is designed to shrink the moment, to make you feel silly for seeing what you see. Imagine catching a partner flirting heavily with someone else right in front of you, or discovering your coworker took credit for your project, or realizing a friend has been spreading your private business. You confront them. They smirk and throw this out. Seriously, you're going to make a big deal out of this? Underneath that question is a message. I've decided my behavior is minor, and if you disagree, you're unreasonable. Here's what mentally untouchable people understand. The size of the deal is not measured by how loud the liar thinks it is. It's measured by the impact on your trust, your boundaries, your self-respect. When they ask that question, instead of shrinking, you expand. Try something like, yes, I am taking it seriously because it affects my ability to trust you. Or it may not feel big to you, but it crosses a line for me. Notice what you're doing there. You're refusing to let them dictate what matters inside your own life. That's psychological sovereignty. That's you walking out of the mental cage they're trying to build. Fifth question. This one is a guilt trip with frequent flyer miles. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. If you've ever heard this from a parent, a boss, or a partner, you probably felt the air leave your lungs for a second. Because yes, they have done things for you. They did help, they did support, and now they're presenting the bill. This is transactional generosity. They give so they can own you later. A truly generous person might feel hurt, might be disappointed, but they don't drag their past, help into every disagreement like a weapon. They don't turn their kindness into a debt you can never fully repay. The Machiavellian twist here is simple. They're rewriting the story so they are the long-suffering hero, and you are the ungrateful villain. Once that narrative is in place, anything you say sounds like cruelty. Here's a mentally untouchable response. I appreciate what you've done for me. That doesn't mean I owe you agreement on everything, or even your past help doesn't give you a free pass to hurt me in the present. That line is raw, but it's real. You're acknowledging reality without letting it erase your boundaries. Very few manipulators are prepared for someone who can hold gratitude and self-respect in the same hand. The sixth question is darker, and I want you to really pay attention if you've heard this one, especially in romantic or family relationships. Who else is going to put up with you? This is not just manipulation. It's psychological warfare. The goal here is isolation. If they can convince you that no one else would want you, that you are too broken, too much, too difficult, then you will cling to them, even when they mistreat you, because they've convinced you they're your last option. Machiavellian Strategy 101. Break their confidence, then present yourself as their only refuge. The brutal truth. people who say this already know your strengths. They've seen your value. That's exactly why they feel threatened by the idea that someone else might cherish what they're currently exploiting. You don't fight this by arguing over whether you're too much. You fight it by rejecting the frame entirely. Instead of defending yourself, you respond from self-worth. Anyone who thinks putting up with me is a favor they're doing doesn't deserve access to me. Even if you can't say that out loud yet, start saying it inside your own head. Because here's the real Machiavellian reversal. Once you believe that sentence, they lose their leverage. You become very, very hard to control. 7th question. Then you'll hear this one when they want time to erase your memory. Why can't you just let it go? You bring up the lie, the betrayal, the repeated disrespect. They sigh, frustrated. You're still on that. Why can't you just let it go? Hidden message. I need you to move past this faster than I am willing to repair it. In healthy relationships, letting it go comes after acknowledgement, repair, and change. In manipulative dynamics, letting it go is demanded up front without any of that. Machiavellian thinking relies heavily on short memory. If they can get you to move on quickly, they never have to live with the tension of their own actions. Your power move here is to anchor the conversation in cause and effect. You can say, I'll be able to let it go once I see consistent change. Or, I'm bringing it up because it's still affecting me. If you want me to let it go, help me understand why I should feel safe again. Notice how that immediately shifts responsibility back to where it belongs. You're not clinging to the past. You're trying to protect your future. Huge difference. The 8th question is pure intimidation. Do you honestly think anyone will believe you over me? If the previous questions attacked your emotions, this one goes after your social reality, your reputation, your support system. Liars who ask this question are basically saying I have more power, more charm, more influence. If you speak up, I'll win. This is Machiavellian logic laid bare. Control the narrative. Control the outcome. It's used by abusive partners, corrupt leaders, manipulative bosses, and sometimes even in friend groups. Here's the thing they don't want you to realize. This question reveals fear. If they truly believed they were safe, they wouldn't need to say this out loud. The fact that they're warning you means they see your voice as a threat. Mentally untouchable doesn't mean you charge into battle recklessly, but it does mean you refuse to be silenced by that kind of bluff. Sometimes the smartest move is strategic, documenting things, confiding in people you trust, speaking with someone neutral like HR or a therapist or a lawyer. But internally, you can answer that question with, I don't know who will believe me yet. I just know I'm done protecting your version of the story at the cost of my own sanity. You are not obligated to live in someone else's fiction just because they have a louder microphone. 9th question. This one is softer on the surface, but it's a gateway to full-blown gaslighting. Are you sure that's how it happened? Now, to be fair, this can be a totally innocent question when there's genuine confusion. But manipulators use it strategically. You remember something clearly. You saw the message. You heard the comment. You recall the promise. They lean in, brow furrowed, and say, Are you sure that's how it happened? That doesn't sound right. I think you're misremembering. They don't tell an obvious new story right away. They just plant doubt. Once you're doubting yourself, they can start feeding you an alternative version of reality. Machiavellian controllers know this. If they can make you question your own memory, they don't have to work so hard to hide their lies. You'll censor yourself. The counter move here is grounded calm. You can respond, yes, I'm sure enough that it's worth taking seriously. Or I know my memory isn't perfect, but this is the way I remember it, and it matters to me. In other words, you don't have to claim to be 100% infallible to still stand by your experience. You're allowed to say, this is my reality, even if they don't like it. And here's something important. Keep track of patterns. If you consistently walk away from conversations, feeling more confused about things you were once clear on, that's not you becoming unstable. That might be you encountering weaponized doubt. 10th question. You may have heard this from someone who hates being confronted. Why are you always so negative? You point out a problem. They point out a personality flaw. Again, this can be true in some cases. Some people do lean more negative, but liars and manipulators love this line because it lets them avoid accountability by turning your concern into a character defect. In Machiavellian terms, they're reframing you as the problem so they can keep operating untouched. The subtle cruelty here is that it targets people who already self-reflect. If you're the type of person who worries about being too harsh or too critical, this hits you deeply. You might start censoring yourself, biting your tongue, telling yourself you're just being dramatic or pessimistic. The healthier response looks like this. I'm pointing out something that's bothering me. That's not negativity. That's honesty. Or if you think I'm wrong, let's talk about that. But dismissing it as negative doesn't solve anything. See how that works? You refuse to accept their label as the main issue. You keep the focus on the behavior, not on your supposed flaws. Mentally untouchable people don't chase after every insult, trying to fix it. They return the conversation to the action they're calling out and let the other person decide whether they're willing to meet them there. 11th question, can you keep this between us? This one can be innocent. Friends have confidences. Lovers share secrets. That's normal. But manipulators use this question to isolate you from your support network and to implicate you in their behavior. If they're asking you to keep abuse, cheating, fraud, or illegal things a secret, they're not inviting you into intimacy. They're dragging you into their shadow, so you'll be less likely to expose them. Machiavellian minds love having dirt on other people. If they can get you complicit in their lies, they know you're less likely to speak out because you'll be afraid of what it says about you. So when someone asks, can you keep this between us? Run it through a filter. Is this protecting their vulnerability or is it protecting their manipulation? If it's the first, like sharing childhood trauma or a private fear, you can decide based on your values. If it's the second, like hiding evidence, lying for them, covering for their cheating or abuse, the mentally untouchable answer is, I'm not comfortable holding this alone. I won't spread it for gossip, but I also won't promise silence if someone's being harmed, including me. You're drawing a line. My loyalty does not extend into being your accomplice. 12th question, and this one is a classic projection flip. Am I really the problem here? Or is it you? This is reverse psychology dressed up as self-reflection. They pretend to open the door to introspection, but only if it leads to you blaming yourself. They might say, it's funny how you always say, I'm the problem. But have you ever considered that you're the common denominator? And because you're trying to be a decent adult, you do consider it. You start combing through your own flaws, your own past, your own triggers. Here's what's walled. Honest, self-aware people are easier to manipulate than arrogant ones. Why? Because you're willing to entertain the idea that you might be wrong. Machiavellian types know that. So they aim every spotlight at your imperfections, so no one has time to notice theirs. Now, are there times when we do contribute to the problem? Of course. But notice the pattern. Are they ever willing to say, yes, I did this and it was wrong and I'm working on it? Or is every conflict a boomerang that comes back to your character? Mentally untouchable doesn't mean you refuse to examine yourself. It means you refuse to be the only one doing it. A powerful response sounds like, I'm absolutely willing to look at my part, but I notice that every time we talk about an issue, it somehow ends with you blaming me. That's not accountability. That's deflection. That is a boundary of reality. You're not screaming. You're not dramatizing. You're simply naming the pattern. And once you can name a pattern, it has far less power over you. 13th question. This one is potent in workplaces and families. Don't you want to be a team player? On the surface, it's about cooperation. Underneath, it's often about compliance. You're asked to stay late without pay, to cover for someone's incompetence, to stay quiet about harassment, to go along with a plan that feels unethical. You hesitate. They smile tightly. Come on. Don't you want to be a team player? Translation. Put the group image above your own well-being. Put our comfort above your conscience. Machiavellian operators exploit your desire to belong. They know humans hate being cast as selfish or disloyal, especially in professional environments where reputation matters. Is a subtle but powerful shift in thinking. Real teams are built on mutual respect, not silent sacrifice from the same one or two people. A mentally untouchable reply might be, I am a team player, which is exactly why I'm raising this. Healthy teams address these issues instead of burying them. Or, being a team player doesn't mean ignoring my limits or my values. You're redefining what team means instead of letting them weaponize it against you. And yes, sometimes that will make you unpopular with those invested in the old way. But it will also make you trustworthy to people who value integrity over image. 14th question. What will people think if you do that? This one sinks deep if you grew up in a culture or family where reputation was everything. Manipulators love to tap into your fear of social judgment. Maybe you're leaving a toxic marriage, speaking up about abuse, quitting a stable job that's slowly killing you, setting a boundary with a parent. They lean in with that quiet dagger. What will people think if you do that? Machiavellian strategy loves crowds, not real crowds, but the imagined chorus inside your head saying you're selfish, crazy, ungrateful, irresponsible. Here's the truth no one told most of us growing up. People is not a real person. People is a projection often used by controllers to get you to police yourself. Mentally untouchable doesn't mean you never care about reputation. It means you decide which people's opinions actually get a vote in your life. Your inner response can be, some people will misunderstand me, and that's okay. The person who has to live with my choices is me. You might not be able to say that out loud to the manipulator yet, but even thinking it reclaims power. You're no longer arguing about what the invisible crowd will think. You're deciding what future you will think when they look back at this moment. And finally, the 15th question, one of the sneakiest, because it sounds like flattery. You're not like everyone else. You get me right. This is the siren song. This is how manipulators recruit their closest allies. They isolate you not by tearing you down, but by elevating you. You're the only one who truly understands me. You see me in a way no one else does. You're special. You get it. You're built different from the others. In Machiavellian terms, this is about creating a special class, the trusted inner circle. Once you accept that role, you're more likely to overlook red flags, more likely to protect them, more likely to excuse behavior you would condemn in anyone else. Because now calling them out feels like betraying not just them, but this special bond, this shared understanding. The antidote here is remembering that genuine intimacy doesn't require you to suspend ethics or reality. You can appreciate being seen without agreeing to be used. If someone says you're the only one who gets me, you're not like the others. A mentally untouchable inner response is, if I get you means helping you stay accountable and honest, then sure. If it means covering for you or denying what's in front of me, then no. You're refusing the unspoken contract hidden inside the compliment. So those are the 15 questions. Let's zoom out for a moment because I want this to be more than just, hey, here's a list of red flags. You already live in the real world. You're going to hear some of these. Again, some of them you've probably used yourself when you were scared or cornered. The goal isn't paranoia. The goal is power with clarity. There are 3 big principles that will keep you mentally untouchable when these questions show up. First, slow the interaction down. Most manipulation works because you respond too fast. They throw the guilt, the flattery, the doubt, and you reflexively appease. Apologize, explain. What if your new default response was a pause? When someone says, you trust me, right? Or, why are you being so sensitive? You don't have to deliver the perfect TED Talk answer on the spot. You can say, I need a moment to think about that. Or even just stay silent while you check in with yourself. Silence is uncomfortable for them. It gives you space to ask, what are they really asking me to give up right now? My boundary, my reality, my reputation. Second principle, name the tactic, at least to yourself. The moment your brain goes, oh, that's guilt tripping, or that's gaslighting, or that's weaponized flattery, the spell starts to break. It's like seeing the strings on the puppet. You don't even have to say it out loud, but by naming it, you separate their behavior from your worth. Instead of thinking, I'm so sensitive, you think they're minimizing my feelings. Instead of maybe I'm crazy, you think they're trying to rewrite the story. Words create distance. Distance creates options. Third principle, choose your response based on your values, not their pressure. A manipulator wants you locked in reaction mode, defending, pleading, explaining, proving. Being mentally untouchable means you respond from a deeper place. Who do I want to be right now? What kind of life am I trying to build? What does self-respect look like in this moment? Sometimes that response is a firm boundary in the moment. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's collecting evidence quietly. Sometimes it's having a brutally honest conversation later when you're calmer. What it's not is abandoning yourself just to get the discomfort to stop. Here's something you might need to hear. If you grew up around people who use these questions often, parents who guilt-tripped, partners who gaslit, friends who weaponized your loyalty, then you didn't just learn to recognize these tactics. You also learned to normalize them. So the first time you start pushing back, you might feel wrong, disloyal, harsh, cold. That feeling doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're rewiring. Imagine your mind like a fortified city. For years, certain people have known the secret entrances. They know exactly which gate to knock on. Your fear of being too sensitive, your need to be seen as loyal, your terror of being alone. What we've done here together is walk you through those gates and shine a light on the mechanisms. Well, this one is the you trust me, right? Gate. This one is the what will people think gate. This one is the who else would put up with you gate. Once you can see them, you can lock them. You can reroute who gets to come in and how. And that doesn't turn you into a cold, cynical Machiavellian monster yourself. In fact, it does the opposite. Because when you're no longer easy to manipulate, You don't have to constantly armor up. You can choose where to be open, where to be generous, where to be kind without that nagging voice in the back of your head, wondering who's going to take advantage of you this time. You become dangerous in the best way. Not because you hurt people, but because no one can so easily hurt you by twisting your values. So the next time someone hits you with one of these questions, you trust me, right? Why are you being so sensitive? If you really cared about me, you would. Are you really going to make a big deal out of this? After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. Who else is going to put up with you? Why can't you just let it go? Do you honestly think anyone will believe you over me? Are you sure that's how it happened? Why are you always so negative? Can you keep this between us? Am I really the problem here, or is it you? Don't you want to be a team player? What will people think if you do that? You're not like everyone else. You get me, right? You don't have to panic. You don't have to launch into a speech. You don't have to win the conversation. You just remember, pause, name the tactic, respond from your values, not from their pressure. And if all you manage in that moment is to say, I need some time to think about this, that alone breaks the automatic script most manipulators are relying on. You might be listening to this thinking about specific faces. A partner, an ex, a parent, a manager, a friend. And maybe it stings a little realizing, wow, I've been on the receiving end of almost all of these. If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Liars and manipulators don't go hunting for idiots. They go hunting for people with heart, people who care, people who are willing to question themselves, people who try to keep the peace, people who are trying to be fair. You weren't stupid. You were loyal. You weren't blind. You were hopeful. Now you get to be all of that. Loyal, hopeful, caring, but with your eyes open. That's what it means to become mentally untouchable. Not that no one ever lies to you again, but that the lies no longer find such easy purchase inside you because you recognize the questions. You recognize the tactics, and most importantly, you recognize your own worth separate from anyone else's script. You're allowed to ask questions, even if they say you trust me, right? You're allowed to have feelings, even if they say you're too sensitive. You're allowed to say no, even if they say if you cared you would. You're allowed to take things seriously, even if they say you're making a big deal out of nothing. You're allowed to hold gratitude and boundaries at the same time. You're allowed to believe that you are worth more than someone putting up with you. You're allowed to remember what happened, even if they say your memory is wrong. You're allowed to speak even if they threaten that no one will believe you. You're allowed to protect yourself even if people might judge. And you're allowed to walk away from anyone who only sees your heart as something to control. The questions liars ask are not random. They are pressure points. But you're learning where those points are. And once you know where the pressure is supposed to go, you can refuse to carry what was never yours. So as you go back into your life after this, keep an ear out, not in a paranoid way, but in a curious way. Notice which question shows up the most around you. Notice which one hits you the hardest inside. And then slowly, gently start practicing new answers they ask. You trust me, right? Inside you answer, I trust myself first. That is how the game changes. That is how the reverse psychology stops working. And that is how you become little by little mentally untouchable